still a problem with Madupi?
Well, it's been a week since the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government declared a state of provincial disaster after the looting, which led to many businesses suffering huge financial losses. The KZN Trade and Investment Organisation says it's worried about the process of recovery and stability. We're joined now by its CEO, Neville Matjie. Mr. Matjie, good evening to you, sir, and thank you very much indeed for your time. You've had some time to assess the damage. How bad is it? What is the province going to need for its businesses to recover?
Yeah, the MEC for Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, Ravi Pillay, and myself actually did key site inspections in the last week and a half. The damage is quite extensive. In certain quarters, actually quite saddening to see how much has been damaged. From the provincial government perspective, as you know, the Premier has declared a state of disaster last week as part of the cabinet resolution. And as a result, that will help us to rebuild certain quarters of the economy. Not everything is damaged. I must qualify that. It just depends on the location and the key areas that were affected. But in essence, what we have picked up is in most of the smaller towns, those are the ones that have been hardest hit. You know, a big metro like eThekwini is able to bounce back fairly quickly. But in terms of Notu, Ezakeni, and certain places such as those, Harding that we visited, you will find that the recovery will be a lot slower than it would be in an area where there's economies of scale.
So in the end, this is about money and whether people have financial resources. Do you think the province, do you think national government needs to make more money available? I have to say, I don't know where that money would come from, but do you think they need to make more money available?
Absolutely. I think the extent of the damage, particularly in terms of infrastructure, would really assist us. You must recall, one of the things that we've got to focus on is rebuilding confidence in terms of the companies locating in KwaZulu-Natal and investment attraction. From that perspective, we've got to make sure that our infrastructure is definitely up to speed to service all our investors. So it would require an element of reprioritization. From our perspective, we have just concluded a lengthy conference today, specifically looking at the economic recovery of KwaZulu-Natal as part of this process, basically doing a 10-day status report, because we had a clear plan, which was a 10-day plan, and then post the 10-day plan is really from an recovery to see exactly who is doing what has been done, what hasn't been done, etc. The critical part was, of course, the mobilization of resources to ensure that we don't find ourselves sitting with a huge problems from a food security perspective, and that has been dealt with, and with the industry coming on board, that has really been quite positive for us as well.
It's one thing to basically try and recover. But when you talk about confidence, key to that is speed, actually. I mean, if people see, I don't know, new fiber cables going in tomorrow and know that they're going to get Wi-Fi in a month's time, well, they're going to stay there. They can see infrastructure being rebuilt. I imagine that the clock is ticking. In other words, government really needs to move very, very quickly. Still hard to do during COVID-19.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the things the Premier has tasked us to do, and he's basically put together an aggressive strategy to create jobs as a result of the current pandemic, plus, of course, added to that were the events of the last 2 weeks. But in essence, we cannot lose our focus from the ball, which is really to create jobs. Through the creation of jobs, we reduce, of course, unemployment and, of course, poverty. But in essence, from that perspective, we've looked at projects that we deemed as projects that could be committed within a year frame. And we've actually worked with key government agencies to see how we can actually accelerate those projects and get them done within the next 6 months. Every week, we are having to report to him in terms of that status report and to give him a clear indication of how we can move those projects. A lot of these projects are private sector led. With them being private sector led, you find that the hurdles are specifically related to regulatory compliance. And through that intervention, and also having the ear of the Premier and our MEC, we're able to move as quickly as possible in moving those projects through the pipeline and getting them committed as quickly as possible. So that's just part of our economic recovery, to accelerate investments into our province. And as part of that is the rebuilding of the image of KZN. KZN is rising and will continue to rise despite the challenges of the last 2 weeks.
I'm afraid to say the other side of the coin around confidence is making sure that the people who did this are held properly accountable, by which I mean are caught and actually go through a court process. If that doesn't happen, I would imagine businesses are going to find it difficult to trust KZN. I realize that's a big statement to make, but in terms of confidence, that's vital too.
Yeah, not only KZN, it's South Africa, effectively, because the legal system in South Africa, although it has been hailed as a legal system that actually works, hence the confidence by a lot of businesses to actually locate in South Africa, because of that strong regulatory environment. But having said that, your point is quite 100%, and that's the role of the security cluster and the security forces to ensure that people are being brought to book. From what has been reported widely, has been that there is an aggressive approach to follow that through. But this is based on what has been reported. I don't sit in those structures, so I can't really speak confidently on that. But from what has been reported widely is that there is an aggressive approach to ensure that the perpetrators are actually brought to book.
Neville, Matjie, thank you very much indeed. CEO Trade and Investment KZN. I really do appreciate the time tonight on the Pulse. Well, plenty to come in.